Welcome to 4P360 lesson number 6. Today we are talking about leading up. So this is one of those parts of leadership that people think, well, wait a second, leading up, well, what does that mean? Leading my leaders, leading my boss, leading my supervisor? But it's their job to lead. How do you lead the leaders? I mean, if you are the leader of the leader, you're the president and you're leading a vice president who's leading the department manager and what, okay, that makes sense. But how do you lead the person who's in authority over you? And that is sometimes confusing to people. But here's an interesting thing about leadership. Line of authority leadership, downward and upward leadership, is actually the easiest, cleanest leadership because the relationships are most cleanly defined. Now, the only thing more important than line of authority leadership is double O leadership, the self-leadership, the reverse leadership. Those are the only things that are more important, but those are also line of authority leadership because no one has more authority over me than me. And so that's an ultimate line of authority thing. And it's me making the choices and decisions that are informing other people of who I am and how to deal with me. And so in that sense, those are authorities as well. And so once you get outside the double O leadership to interpersonal leadership, the most obvious leadership is being the one with the responsibility to lead, the responsibility to be the influence, the responsibility to be the decision maker, the responsibility to set policy, the responsibility to tell other people what needs to be done. The person with those responsibilities has a job to do. And so they're kind of forced into leadership by role. But line of authority leadership leading up is the next most defined interpersonal leadership. Leading your leader is actually less complicated than leading across or certainly leading diagonally. If you have authority, you have the responsibility, the obligation, the job, the role to lead those under your authority. If you are under authority, you also have a responsibility. Your first and primary key responsibility is be an asset, not a liability. That your presence in the person's life should be a plus, not a minus. Now, a curious thing about that concept is that applies to every single relationship there is. So if I go to work for a company, being at work at that company should be a plus to me, not a minus to me. That somewhere in the totality of what benefits I get should be better for me than not getting those benefits, despite whatever the costs involved of the time, the effort, the energy, the expertise. And here's an interesting key to consider, the opportunity cost. There's always opportunity cost, meaning what options do I have available to me? And of course, in 4P360, we are developing leaders. We're looking for the best of the best. We're looking for great team members to be great team members of a great team. So we're looking for the best. So those people will have options. Those people will have opportunity. And when people have opportunity, there's an opportunity cost to them being here with us, working here. And it's the same thing in reverse. So if I work for you, there's an opportunity cost. That first off, immediately with us, you're paying me something. Whatever I do for you should be worth what it is you're paying me. Overall, I should be a plus, not a minus. Overall, I should be an asset, not a liability. Overall, my presence should help a company make money rather than lose money. And that's true generally in all relationships. Again, my presence in your life, I should be a net plus rather than a net minus. And so you just have the business version of this universal principle on both sides of the equation. But if you have hired me to do a job, there's an opportunity cost that someone else could also be hired in my position. And if I'm the one occupying this role and you had the opportunity to get somebody else for the role that's not me, part of being asset, not a liability, is I need to be a better overall asset than those other people you could have hired. And unless I'm like the only person on the planet who's capable of doing this job, that obligates me to be a quality team member. That obligates me to make sure hiring me as opposed to the other guy or the other girl or the other man, the other woman, the other team to outsource it, that hiring me was the smart move. Now, a basic principle if you want to lead up is do your job. Hopefully that's a given. If I've been hired to do a job, I should do the job. Again, be an asset, not a liability. And not just an asset, not a liability in terms of I do what it was I was paid for, but relative to your opportunity costs of all those other people who might have wanted the position that I'm in. And the higher up you go in any kind of a hierarchical system where you get into higher paid positions where there's fewer and fewer of them, there's a pretty good chance there's a lot of other people that would have wanted that job. If you're entry level, minimum wage earner, chances are they're going to have to find a bunch of people. And they're going to take who they can get that can do a pretty decent job. But the higher up you go, the higher up you go in authority, the higher up you go in leadership, the higher up you go in scarcity, the higher up you go in performance, the higher paid the position, the more people would be interested in that, and the better my performance ought to be. So basic principle, do your job. Leading up means leading the leader to have added influence of one who leads a leader. It begins with one's job being done and done well. There's a serious credibility issue with trying to get one's leader to do something different if, at the very least, one's own job isn't being done. If you're trying to get someone else to do their job differently, to get their job done the way you want their job to be done, but you're not even doing your job. Especially, you're not even doing your job for them, and you're trying to get them to modify how they do their job vis-a-vis you. That's going to be a credibility issue. So it's obvious, I hope. Obvious. Do your job. And don't just do your job, but do your job well. Learn your job. Execute well. Another key principle, be a good example. This is the self-leadership initiative. Because if you're trying to take the initiative to influence somebody else, particularly you're trying to take the initiative to influence your own line of authority leader, it's important that you be taking the initiative to lead yourself first. You want to be the example of the initiative taker. You want to be the example of the person who's influencing a leader, yourself. You want to be an example of the person who is following good leadership initiative, again, yourself. Because self-leadership has two basic components, the leader side and the submission side. You submit to your own quality leadership. You submit to your own quality decisions. You submit to your own quality solutions. You just do them because you know their quality. Just as you would submit to your leader when your leader is making quality decisions. Just as you submit to your leader when your leader has quality solutions to problems. And so in this whole equation, the self-leadership initiative can dramatically impact your influence with a leader. So one key of leading is to be a good example of someone in your role. Lead yourself so your boss doesn't have to. You make sure to get the job done, do it well, so your boss doesn't need to keep following up with you. Now, importantly, if you clarify exactly what your role entails and the tasks that are yours to do, that makes that a lot easier. And to make sure that your boss knows you're doing it, and so that specifically the things you need to be doing now are done now. A basic principle of leading up. Lighten the leader's responsibility load. One of the most direct ways to make a leader's job easier is to be self-led. If I can alleviate as much as possible the leader having to always tell me things, if I can alleviate as much as possible the leader having to hunt me down to tell me what my job is, if I can alleviate as much as possible leaders having to remind me of where to be and when to be there, if I can alleviate as much as possible a leader's need to supervise me, to micromanage me, all of those things, if I can alleviate those responsibilities of making sure my job gets done because I'm making sure my job gets done, that lightens the leader's responsibility load. It means that you require little guidance and little or no supervision. If the leader has a whole team of self-led team members, that would be an unbelievably great team. Imagine leading an organization of self-led leaders on self-led teams. You end up not needing a whole lot of people in middle management and intermediate middle management and lower level middle management and lower upper management and middle upper. You can eliminate a whole lot of layers and have a much flatter organization. That instead of having team members on a team of 10 whose job it is to make sure everyone does their job, that the leader in a team of 10's primary job is just to be a facilitator and the one that reports to the next level. Because the team pretty much handles their own business. They take care of their own jobs. Stuff is happening. And you have somebody who's more of a facilitator, coordinator, more than a manager, controller, logistics, make sure everything happens person. So if you can lighten the leader's responsibility load, that gives you more influence. That makes leaders more receptive because they're not constantly having to tell you what to do, so clearly you know what's going on. Clearly you know how to do your job. And if you're dealing with quality people seeking quality leadership, quality leaders listen to quality leaders. And so by lightening the leader's responsibility load, you're demonstrating the quality and caliber of your value. If you need little guidance and little or no supervision, you're self-led. You're on the ball. Now, that doesn't mean you don't report in and let the leader know what's going on, but you don't need the leader to be on your case. You're taking initiative. And they know, okay, well, hey, Scott's on the job. I know the job's done. Why? Because Scott's on the job. If there's a problem, he'd let me know. So a leader could lead a huge team of such people. As a general principle, those who make the leader's job easier tend to both be the least dispensable and the most influential with the leader. Basically, the top 20% are always going to have a job. If you're the top 1 out of 5, short version is when they have to let 4 or 5 people go, guess what? It's not you. You become indispensable because you're the one who gets everything done. And so if the company is experiencing a setback of some sort and they have to let half the team go, if you're the top 20%, you're not going unless you choose to. And when they need advice, when they need to know what's going on at that level, they tend to talk to their top people. They don't tend to talk to the bottom people. They tend to talk to the people who get things done. They tend to talk to people whose presence makes the business easier to run and more profitable and run more smoothly. And all of those things is, if you're that person, that's part of leading up. That's part of having influence with your leaders. So some direct lead up principles here. To lead up, influence decisions. If leadership is influence, which is what John Maxwell constantly reminds us, then we are leading up when we're influencing our leaders. We're leading up when we're influencing policy. We're leading up when we add our knowledge. And if we're a knowledge worker, if we know more about something than the people that are officially in charge, we need to show up with our knowledge to help our leaders. And so we become an influencer by virtue of being the path through which knowledge enters into our leaders' ability to make decisions. We are influencing up when we show up and we add our expertise, when we add our point of view and our ideas to decisions being made by leaders. Now, sometimes influence can be as simple as making requests. If I make a request as granted by those in authority to make such grants, I've had influence. You just go make a suggestion, you ask a question, you ask if something's okay. That you took the initiative on the idea and you asked. Now, we even see this in kids' class. We give the kids the opportunity to lead. If a child comes up and says, oh, can we do this drill? Now, if the child is a good student, and we, in our estimation, think, well, that's not a bad drill. That would be a helpful drill. We will say yes because we want to encourage that kind of initiative with our good students. We want our best students to see that the path to power is be a good student, take initiative. Now, on the other hand, if a misbehaving student comes up and makes an identical request, we will probably, out of habit, say no. So we're teaching them, even at the kid level, the path to power is not just ask to have your way. The path to power is demonstrate a measure of worthiness and then ask your way. And so as simple a method as just ask for a favor, ask for a grant of permission for something to the person with authority to make such grant, showing you are taking the initiative to get something done that will be good for the team, that will be good for the company, that will be good for the division, that will be good for whatever the purposes of the organization as a whole, or at least the section of the organization is going to be. And asking for those things in a way that's contributing to the team. It's not just like asking for your vacation. That's an individual thing. But asking for things that will be helpful for the team, helpful for the goals, helpful for the vision, helpful for the mission, however it is you define it. Sometimes, just making a simple suggestion. It's a very easy way to influence that. Now, more involved is helping define and solve actual problems. We're going to get to that next. On our way there, we're going to make note of this reality. Decisions are made by the person with the authority to make the decision. I'm going to say this again. This is important to understand. It's an oft overlooked aspect of leading up. Decisions are made by the person with the authority to make the decision. Now, if that person is not the owner of the company, that person is responsible to the higher leadership for that decision. So if I work for a company and I've got like 3 or 4, 8 layers above me of leadership, and this is part of my job. My job is to make these kind of decisions. The authority rests with me and the responsibility rests with me. And so I am responsible to the higher-ups for these decisions. So when someone else has the authority to make decisions, what I need to do is respect and honor the fact it's their decision to make. It's not my decision to make. It's their decision to make. Now, if the person is the owner of the company, that person is taking the risk. If the company goes down, the owner of the company is the one who loses everything. Very often, company owners have a lot at stake. More at stake sometimes than we can even imagine. That if there's not even necessarily a complete collapse, they don't just lose their company, they lose everything. They could end up bankrupt, deeply in debt, and completely wiped out. While most of us who just work there could just go find another job. And that may or may not be a jest, but we can go find another job. What do you do when what you've done for a job for the last 15 or 20 years is you've run this company? And it's hard to go get another job to run another company if your most recent experience is, oh yeah, I just drove my last company to the ground, we filed bankruptcy, I'd like to work for you and your company. That's not a good pitch for a job. So it's important to remember that decisions are not always made by the smartest. They're not always made by the most knowledgeable. They're not always made by the wisest, most experienced, or the most right person. They're made by the person with authority. And that person may or may not be all or any of the above. Meaning that they may not be the smartest, the most knowledgeable. They may not be the wisest or experienced. They may not be right. But it's their decision to make. There is a line I remember seeing on my dad's wall in his office. It says, the boss may not always be right, but he's always the boss. Now, for him, there were two reminders in there. One was, he may not always be right. Just because he's the boss doesn't mean he's right. But he's still the boss. The buck stops with him. He has to make the decision. And then for the employees, it's a reminder that whether you agree with him or not, he's still the boss. Leaders rarely whine or grumble or complain that the person with authority to decide has decided. Because if you have a proper leadership mentality, you know, okay, look, this is my decision to make when I have the decision to make. And what I need is the team to execute on the decision that's been made. Now, if you're wasting your energy grumbling and complaining and whining about a decision that got made, we're not getting things done. Likewise, when the person with authority to make the decision that maybe I don't like makes a decision, it's my job to execute on the decision because they have line authority. And if they're in my line of authority and they're upward on the line and it's their authority and responsibility to make that call and they made the call, unless I have a really, really good reason not to, I just need to execute on that. Now, what if I disagree with it? Well, I'm still whining and grumbling and modeling to my team that if you don't like my leadership, by the way, this is how I deal with my leaders. I whine, I complain, I grumble, I gripe. So if you don't like what I'm doing, you can whine and grumble, you can gripe, you can complain, you can call me names, you can pass judgment, you can be all condemning, you can talk about me being a stupid boss and how the heck did I ever get this job and now what dumb thing am I... You know, I don't want to set that example. If I don't want to set that example for my team to do it with my leadership, well then I don't do it with my leadership. Or I don't do it with my leaders. So I model what I want from my team by how I behave where I'm the one under authority. Now, if I disagree with the decision, I seek to be an influence with the leaders. I seek to be an influence with the decision makers. I seek to be an influence so the leadership is empowered to make better decisions. So I can reflect back information that perhaps they didn't factor in. But maybe they did. Maybe there's some balancing variables at play that I may or may not know about. Like one of the ones that gets to be very, very common is there may be budgetary considerations that I might not think about, that I might not understand or consider, because I look around and then I kind of have this hallucination that, well, they have all the money they could possibly want to do everything I might think they should do. But they might be looking at very, very scarce resources, and perhaps even wondering if they're going to exist in 2 years. And that if they do what I think they should do, which might be a very expensive move, and they made the exact same response to everybody at my level and above, that they're going to run out of money in 30 days, much less survive the next 2 years. So I may not know all the variables in play. My job is to just make sure the decision makers have all the information they need to make a quality decision. Now on the problem solving thing, you lead up by contributing to problem solving. So if you want to be a tremendous influence, one of the most powerful things you can do is contribute to problem solving. The definition of a problem is something with a solution. The difference between a problem and a challenge, because if you can help a company overcome a challenge, you can be a superstar. But if you can help a company deal with a big problem, you can be their salvation. You can literally save the company. Because a problem is something where if you do not solve the problem, something bad happens. A challenge is if you do not address a challenge, well, nothing bad happens. If you overcome a problem, you get back to even and maybe ahead. If you can partially solve a problem, at least you mitigate the damage. It's not going to do as much damage. If you leave a challenge alone, nothing bad happens. But if you can overcome this challenge, now you're ahead. Now you're winning. And so depending upon what parts of the self-help, personal development, leadership community you're from, I just want you to understand how I'm using these words, what this vocabulary means. Challenges are optional. Problems are mandatory. In order to solve a problem, something bad's going to happen if you don't do something about this problem. To solve the problem, first, problems must be adequately understood. They must be adequately defined. So someone can define the situation, which requires access to solid, accurate enough information. If you get solid enough information, accurate enough information, a well-defined problem, sometimes solutions practically present themselves. On the other hand, sometimes they require some creativity. And if you can contribute to problem solving for your leaders, if you are part of the answer, if you are the path through which the solution or key parts of the solution come, you become that indispensable person. There have been team members that are the go-to people for their top leadership to address certain problems, because they know this is the person who's going to be able to get the job done. This is the person who's going to be able to figure it out. This is the person who's going to know what we need to do. This is the person who's at least going to know what we need to find out so we can figure out what we need to do. And if you can be that person, you're that go-to person for your upper leadership, then you are leading up in a powerful way and become an indispensable member of the team. A key way to lead up is to help provide concise, accurate information. That helps leadership define and understand the problem well so they can make decisions based on actual reality. I've been working with a colleague of mine, and we've been troubleshooting some situations and addressing some problems and crafting our challenges and choosing our challenges. And the problem occurred because we, and in particular he more than me, was given inaccurate information. So the source through which the information was coming, we found out that somewhere down the path that there were some people that were flat out lying, for one. And there were a lot of people who were conveying as a certainty that which was merely a probability, or conveying as though they knew that at which they really were guessing. And decisions were being made on the information. Now, those sources of the bad information, do they now have more influence or less influence with us as leaders? Dramatically less. What we've learned is when we get information from either of these two channels, we can't trust that information. Now, they may want us to make decisions based upon what they say because the decisions they want us to make serve their interests. But we can't make decisions based upon what the information they give us because they've already demonstrated to us over the last 8 months that we cannot rely on the information they give us actually being true. So when they tell us something, we have to hold it very loosely. Even so much to the point that we've got some information sets, we're going, okay, we understand what you're telling us. We have to wait until it's actually done before we know we can do anything with it. And that's the same thing in any position of leadership. If you are being a source of information to your leaders, make sure your information is accurate. Now here gets to be one of the things about accuracy. If you don't know, say if you think something will be done by the 1st, but you really don't know, that there's like 2 or 3 variables still involved in it that also need to happen. If they happen, you'll be done by the 1st. And if they don't happen, then you won't be done by the 1st because you're going to have to troubleshoot those individually and it might get pushed back 2 weeks. Do you go tell your boss, it'll be done by the 1st? Or do you go tell your boss, we've got 2 variables in play. If those 2 come together, we'll be done by the 1st. If they don't, we'll have to push it back at least 2 weeks. But we won't know until the 25th. Well, that's what you tell them. You give them the accurate information, including tell them what you don't know. Tell them the pieces that are in play and be prepared to answer clarifying questions about it. That is the accurate information. Now the leadership can make decisions based upon the probability. They're going, okay, so we'll be done by the 1st, and so that means we can close the deal with the contract, and that means that we can get paid, and if we close, this client is really, really good about paying as soon as we're done, so that means that once we get that all finished for the client on the 1st, that client will pay us by the 3rd, the money will be in our account by the 5th, we're fine because our bills aren't due until the 10th. But what if you're in leadership and you find out, oh, it may not be the 1st, it might get pushed back past the 10th. Then I'm not going to count on that money until we know we're going to get that money. We need to scramble somewhere else on something else because we have bills that we have to pay by the 10th. We have to meet payroll. Accurate information. Accurate information helps leadership define the problem. Accurate information helps leadership understand the situation so they can make better decisions. If you are the person through which quality information comes so better decisions can be made, you become indispensable. You become trusted. You become influential. You become the leader that leads up. Now, another key way is to offer potential solutions to an already defined problem. Once you know what the problem is, if you can be the one who offers, now, no, it's not try to impose a solution and tell them what they have to do. You're offering options. You're creating an opportunity for them to look at another way of doing things. Even if the only thing you have to offer is something they've already thought of, and they may even tell you so. It's at least validation of the way of thinking. So there are some times where I'll offer some suggestions, and it's like totally new thinking that they hadn't looked at it from that angle. Sometimes I offer my thinking on something, and it's exactly what they were already considering, which only helps for them to validate and say, okay, Scott thinks the same thing. So let's look at that more carefully. That's probably what we're going to do. Because now we have outside influence telling us exactly the same thing that we think we're seeing. So if you can offer potential solutions in an already defined problem, even if it's redundant to what they're already thinking, sometimes that can be helpful. Here's where you run into problems. This is how you lose your influence. So this is important to remember. If you offer potential solutions to your leadership, who gets to make the decision? The person with the authority to make the decision. If I offer you a suggestion and you decide differently than my suggestion, and then I get all bent out of shape, are you ever going to ask me for a suggestion again? Absolutely not. Not if you're a quality leader anyway, because if Joe is the kind of person where if you ask Joe's opinion and Joe gives you his opinion and then you don't go with Joe's opinion, Joe's going to be all upset. Okay, you're just not going to talk to Joe about that kind of thing anymore. What was interesting is, so kind of a client / colleague of mine, because this is like a coach across thing where I'm not coaching someone that really needs my expertise. We rely on each other's expertise. So it's a woman, and she was working on her branding. Part of her branding has to do with like her personal style to be memorable, and so she has a series of hats that she wears as part of her personal brand. Well, one of her clients told her, well, I don't really like the hats. And she said, well, thank you very much for your opinion. And then later on it comes back, I notice you're still using the hats in your advertising. It's like, yeah. Well, I told you I don't think the hats are a good idea. I don't like the hats. And she says, I understand you expressed your opinion on that, and I appreciate that that's your opinion. But it's my decision. A couple of months later, it's like, I can't believe you're still using the hats. Aren't you listening? I told you. I think the hats are a bad idea. You need to stop using the hats. Now, what's going on? Is she ever going to ask this person's opinion on anything? I mean, the hat thing was an unsolicited opinion, and he's upset that the coach who's helping him make money, who's already helped him get tens of thousands of dollars of contracts, he's upset that she's wearing hats. Darn it. Because he doesn't think she should wear hats. And that her marketing and her advertising and her branding needs to change because, darn it, that's his opinion. And you go, okay, this woman is climbing you towards 6 figures so far in helping, that she has already, or she more than tripled what his investment was in the first 6 months of her working with him. He's upset about the hats, darn it. He's not grateful that he pays 15 grand and he makes 45. He's upset about hats. Did she ask him about the hats? She didn't even ask him about the hats. What do you think are the odds she's going to ask him about anything? I would say that's probably going to be pretty close to 0. And so one of the ways to kill your influence is when you make a suggestion, if you are committed in some way that, well, you asked my opinion, therefore you are obligated to obey me. They will not ask your opinion again. If you get this idea in your head that because I offered my opinion, because I was asked, that you are now obligated to do what I tell you to, and if you don't, I'm going to whine, complain, grumble, maybe even to your face. What I'm saying is, don't let me have any influence. Don't let me lead up, because I don't lead up very well. If you delegate, if you so much as ask a question, if you even give me the opportunity to express an opinion, I assume I have authority now. I'm the boss. You will do what I say. And if you don't, I'm going to behave like I'm the boss, and you should have done what I said. And by the way, bosses don't tend to like that very much in their employees. Department managers tend to not like that very much in their direct reports. People with hiring and firing authority tend to not like team members who behave that way. So a key way to lead up is to offer clear information. A key way to lead up is to offer potential solutions. And a key way to protect your leading up position, your leadership influence leading up, is to remember decisions are made by the people with the authority to make those decisions. If you ask my opinion, I'm not your decision maker. If you ask my opinion, I am an opinion provider. I am not your decision maker. It's your decision. I offer information. I offer clarity. I offer suggestions. I offer ideas. I don't control you. Now, on the other hand, if I'm the boss, well, maybe I do. But we're talking about leading up. If a client's hired me as their lawyer, I'm the lawyer. I don't run the company. I give legal advice. Maybe they follow it, and maybe they don't. So remember that it's leadership's responsibility and authority to make the decision. So part of leading up includes respecting the fact that decisions get made by the person with the authority to make the decision. Another part of leading up, contribute to guidance. One of the jobs of leadership is to provide guidance. Now this can take the form broadly with job descriptions where they let you know what your job is broadly, or much more precisely with KPIs, key performance indicators, so they let you know, here's what we actually look at to see if you're fulfilling your job description. Those are called key performance indicators. Like for a salesperson, it might have to do with number of deals closed, or dollar value of deals closed, or number of appointments had, or number of calls made, or what your close rate is. Whatever's in the KPIs, more tactically, more precisely, more day-to-day, week by week, is defining whether your job is being done. So offering that kind of guidance, specific guidance, tactical guidance, strategic guidance, general guidance, that's part of the leadership's job. So if you want to influence the guidance, contribute to your leadership's guidance, you can be a contributor to that by providing useful information and feedback. So when they're offering their guidance, they might be assigning particular tasks, they might be assigning projects. They could invite someone to be part of a strategic vision. And so if you can offer useful information, if you can offer feedback from closer to the problem, you can offer feedback from your place of knowledge, your place of experience, your place of expertise, and that can aid in the guidance, that's a rather obvious way. But another way when you're being provided guidance is to reflect the guidance offered back at the level of next task. What that means is you have your KPIs, or maybe you don't. Every once in a while, when you do business consulting or business coaching, we are occasionally surprised at how few people actually know what their job is. That there are no performance indicators, much less key performance indicators. That sometimes they only know that they're doing a good job because nobody's yelling at them. But let's assume that you've got some of this going on. If you can reflect back their guidance at the level of next task, so you can let your leadership know what you understand you're supposed to be doing next, what you're supposed to be doing, this hour, this day, this week, so that they know what activity you are about to engage in. That's a great way of showing understanding, and that tells your leaders what to expect. So it could be as simple a thing as, I have a woman who comes in to help clean and organize as part of her task. And then she also helps me in the office. And there's a lot of project level work that she does with me. Well, that's a bit of a range. And so some of the times what she'll do is she'll come in and she'll let me know, this is what I'm going to be doing first, so that I know what she's going to be doing. So say if I was on my way out while she was on her way in, and we just have 5 minutes, I know what's happening when I'm gone. And that's just letting me know what the guidance has been like. So I know what she's doing. And sometimes leaders just need to know what you're up to. And depending how reliable you are getting done the things you said you were going to get done is going to determine how much follow-up they think they need to get. So, and then keeping leaders in the loop on key milestones helps leaders know how well guidance is being followed. And if there are bottlenecks can be a problem. And if you can provide information on the bottlenecks and some suggestions, that can help. So there was one organization that I was just connected to, and what we were realizing is this one person was a bottleneck. And what it essentially boiled down to is he had too much going on. And he wasn't getting to all of the jobs. Some stuff that should have been done in 72 hours was taking weeks. Well, ultimately, once he was adequately convinced, look, you're not getting this part of the job done. It shouldn't be your job. We need you to let it go. Now, there wasn't a line of authority here. So that one was more of a lead across situation. The idea was the same, though. There was a bottleneck. The team had to discuss the bottleneck. And then he let go of that part of the job. We put it in someone else's hand, and now the projects are happening 4 weeks faster. And so simple things in leading up, leading down, leading across, leading diagonally is you're always solving problems. And intermediate lead up, make an effective presentation. Now this is intermediate. It's essentially a sales presentation for an idea or set of ideas. Just as with any sales presentation, you need to know your audience, and you need to focus not just on facts and features, although there should probably be some time on facts and features, but also on benefits and outcomes. Learning how to make an effective, concise presentation to leaders is a more advanced form of contribution that can require a measure of trust, and thus trustworthiness, reliability, and a track record. The more often your suggestions work, the more they'll listen. But your suggestions have to work. They have to see that they make sense. And the idea of making an effective presentation, a lot like making any kind of a sales presentation, like, do you blame the customer for not buying? Do you blame the prospect for not becoming a customer? Or would you tinker with your presentation? If you find out you've got 10 salespeople and 2 of them are selling lots and 5 of them are selling almost nothing. They're selling the 3% that's been looking for your product and they want to buy it. Well, then what are you going to do? You're going to figure out, well, what are these 2 people doing? And how can we do what they're doing? And it could be as simple a thing as the 5 that aren't selling is showing up and telling them about the product. Like walking out and saying, this car has 4 wheels, there's a steering wheel, here's where the gas tank is, you want it? While the others are talking more about its benefits, like, okay, so this is the car. Now these are the safety features. So if you're driving with your family and someone T-bones your car, you're out with your kids and some drunk driver runs that red light and smashes into you, we've got 7 airbags that will protect your family. Now, who's going to sell more? Because some people are going, like, yeah, 4-wheel steering wheel, yeah. Boring fact, boring fact, boring. And the others are telling you, this is what will happen. This is why this is here. This isn't here just for it to be here. This isn't here just to show off the mechanical skills of the engineers. This is here so if a drunk driver runs a red light and hits your car, we've got these side impact airbags, so if you get T-boned, you'll be okay. Your wife will be okay. Your husband will be okay. Your kids in the back seat will be okay. That's why we have this. That's going to have influence. And so what would you do? You focus on not the feature, 7 airbags, okay? All right, great. I don't plan on getting hit. What's the benefit? If someone else is a bad driver and someone else hits your car, your kids are safe. That's the benefit. And so that's how you work on making an effective presentation. You look on, okay, what is the audience? The audience is our leadership, so who are they? I mean, I work for them. I should know something about what their agenda is, right? What is the business about? What are we about? What does the company want to accomplish? What's our values? What's our mission? That part should be pretty easy because I work here. I work for these people. I know what the deal is. I know what ultimately they want, even if sometimes the behavior would indicate that they're not really pursuing that very well because they're scrambling, motivated by some other things. And maybe I can help, but I'm not quite in a place where I can just make a suggestion and they'll listen. And so I need my presentation to be effective, and you craft your presentation. And then you distill it down to meet the time frame they might have to be available to talk about this thing. And it could be that I could sit down with my friends and in 3 hours unpack the whole thing, but my leadership may not have 3 hours. My leadership might be able to give me 20 minutes. How can I frame it, prep it, explain it in 20 minutes, give them everything they need to have, and then back it up with documentation that I can leave with them that they can look at and going, that sounded pretty good. We want to know more about that. Then I might get my 3 hours. But I need to show them that, hey, I've got an idea here for you. This can help. But they don't know that, and they're not likely to block out 3 hours out of an already scrambling schedule so that one of their employees can talk their ear off in what might be this rambling, never-ending, where the heck is he going, and okay, I can see why an employee would think that way, but that doesn't help the company type of idea. The effective presentation, the skills of being able to be concise, be focused, it's like doing a sales presentation. And you learn that skill. Another intermediate lead up. Now this one's kind of counterintuitive. Intermediate lead up, ask for input or help. Ask? Well, to many, that doesn't sound like leadership. It is. It might be counterintuitive for some. It's like, but I'm asking for help? I'm asking for input? How is that leading? It shows that you're thinking, you're making decisions, you're being strategic. Now try to think about this in forms of being the leader. Is it good leadership if you are in charge of your division to ask for input from your team members? Is it good leadership to ask for input from your knowledge workers? Is it good leadership to ask for some help from the professionals who know more about that particular area? Of course it is. Using a Star Trek analogy, we call that Picard-style leadership. That he would sit around and ask all of his department heads for their thoughts, and ultimately he has to make a command decision. So you can do this, and it's an intermediate level skill. It's not a basic skill. Asking for input or help. This is strategic asking. You ask for specific input or specific help, not just help with your job or what do I do. It isn't asking a leader to do the job. It's getting more clarity so you can do the job and you can do the job more effectively. It's making sure you understand which of several options a leader might like. It's getting direction on a particular bit of the job. It can be as simple as asking if it matters to a leader, because sometimes it doesn't, in which case the authority might be delegated to you. So I had a team member ages ago that was brilliant at this. Is she would come ask for my clarity, says, okay, I've got 3 different ways I could do this, depending upon what you want it to look like when we're done. I could do it this way, I could do it this other way, or if you really want it super clean, organized, I could do it this 3rd way, but that's going to cost more money and take more time. But if you want it to look like that and you want to put in the money, you don't mind if I spend the time, we can nail it that well. And I looked as like, yeah, I'm not really that interested in that one. For this part, the simple basic one will do, and sometimes the intermediate one will do, and on a couple of things, I needed the more advanced one. But because she would come to me to get clarity, she would ask for some help on the decision so that she knew what she was doing. That made all the difference in the world. And the work went much, much more smoothly. And then I always knew what was going on, and I knew what the outcomes were going to look like. And a lot of it was, she would ask if it mattered. Now, sometimes, frankly, it doesn't matter. It's like, yeah, okay, you organize it however you want to organize it. Just so long as when I go there, it would make sense. But, I wouldn't have hired you to do the job if I didn't think however you did it was going to be a way that makes sense. I mean, even something as simple in one's personal life, like a kitchen. I was just chatting with somebody about setting up a kitchen lately. I was watching 2 women set up a kitchen for a 3rd woman. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching not being like a super big kitchen guy, I wasn't sure quite how all the decisions were being made. But then the woman whose kitchen was organized came in and she just stood there and she looked around, she opened cupboards and said, this is amazing. Now I'm thinking, isn't that kind of like an idiosyncratic personal thing of where you like stuff? But apparently there's this whole system of logic that if you cook at the level that all 3 of these women cook, there's just stuff that you like having set up a certain way because it creates the flow in the kitchen, which wasn't something I totally understood before that day. I have much more understanding of it now because it was being explained to me as it went. And one of the women involved in the organizing was my mother. And so she and I can have these conversations and say, okay, I was watching while you were doing this thing and I'm not really, okay, help me out here. And so if you have someone doing a job, you figure that they're going to do a good job. I don't really care how they do the job. Somebody might tell them, like, well, just do it, whatever way will be fastest. Or do it whatever, just any way you do it, so long as it's done by Friday is fine with me. Any way you do it, so long as it's within this budget is fine with me. And you let them make the call. Now, many leaders would rather have a check-in and a few questions, rather than have something bogged down with a team member stuck trying to figure something out or choosing between multiple nearly equal options. So we had one thing bogged down one time because someone was uncertain about a document. Okay, I am a lawyer. Hand me the document. I'll look at it. I'll edit it. I'll adjust it. I'll tell you what the things mean. Don't just have it sit on your desk for 4 weeks. This needs to be turned around in 72 hours. Let's go. But it got bogged down. Now, if he would have just checked in and said, okay, I have some questions about this document. There's some clauses in here. I'm not sure what the legal significance is of this if I put my name on it. Like, okay, so you have a question. Don't leave it sitting on your desk. Hand it off to the professional who can answer their question. And what ended up happening is we had a bog down because he was trying to figure it out. He didn't need to figure it out. And if he would have provided the feedback on what the problem was, it was easy to solve. But he didn't go to the other team members for some help. And very often things get bogged down where someone's trying to choose between multiple nearly equal options. Now this one was done to me. This one was bad. I had a project going on, and this guy was looking at replacing all of the doorknobs in a care facility. Like, okay, because the ones we had were old and we needed some new ones that would meet certain criteria. And so we went towards, okay, this is what we need. All right, just get it and get them installed. Well, he was doing some research because he wanted to make sure we got not just good ones that would do the job. He wanted to make sure we got the right ones, the best ones, the best value. And he was comparing and contrasting and looking at all of these things and going. And when I came in and asked him, like, so are we done? He said, well, no, I'm still double checking, and I'm going to go pick up some samples, install them, and kind of see how they all work. And what he didn't understand is every day this wasn't done was costing hundreds of dollars. And in order to save, I don't know, it might have been to save $300, he spent $3,000. Why? Because he had a mentality that saw it like if he was doing it for his home. Well, we shouldn't spend more money than we need to spend. It's like, but you know, you're spending money existing because you're paying the mortgage, and we can't open the facility until this is done. And he didn't understand that it was costing $7,500 of negative cash flow to have this place in possession not being open. It just didn't occur to him. Now, how much lead up authority is that person going to get to keep? Very little. How much decision-making authority is that person going to continue to have delegated to him? Very little. He went from being an unsupervised site manager to being instantly a check-in every week site manager, followed almost immediately by a general manager showing up on site by surprise, anywhere from 1 to 3 up to 7 times in a week. And finally, he was just removed because while he had the best of intentions and he was theoretically capable of doing it, he just wasn't. He couldn't be relied upon to be a good decision maker and get it done on his own. And so his position, he wasn't suited for that position. Now, he may have been well suited for any subset of that position, but not the whole obligation. He wasn't very good without supervision. He needed a supervisor. And so his leadership needed the check-in. His leadership needed to know what was going on. And his leadership learned to not depend on him. So he's going to lose all of his influence up. So later on, he's trying to present his ideas and his concepts, and his leaders would give him hard deadlines and let him know, it's like, okay, you have until Tuesday. If it's not done by Tuesday, we're sending someone in to take it over. Again, and guess what? It wasn't done by Tuesday. And the senior leader showed up on site, took a look at the situation, had it all done in 48 hours. Some stuff that had been taking him months got done in 48 hours. Because you put a superior leader on it. And he lost all of his influence, and he lost all of his opportunity. When he could have been a great lead-up leader, had he just protected that and made sure he did all of his job. And so part of intermediate lead-up, ask for input or help. And he would have preserved his leadership, asking for input. He would have preserved his leadership, asking for help from his leaders for extra clarity, extra priority, rather than just stumbling around blindly, claiming that he could do it, and then not doing it. Another intermediate lead-up, ask for permission or authority. Now there's a saying, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. It might be a saying, but it's also a dangerous practice. If you choose it, you had better be right. And you'd better have leaders that will accept it. Because if someone breaks my rules and just goes off and does something and then later on comes back and says, hey, but it all worked out, they are going to be in trouble with me. Even if ultimately they were right. Because if they stepped outside the bounds of their authority and they made a judgment call that wasn't an emergency, that will be of concern to me. Now for some people, so long as it all works out, they really don't care. I don't personally happen to be one of those. And part of it for me is like, just because you were right this time doesn't mean you're going to be right every time, and I should have been consulted. I should not have been surprised by what was being done, especially if the responsibility is going to land on me. I should at least know what's going on. So, intermediate lead up is ask for permission or authority. Generally, it's better to get your permissions sorted out beforehand so you know what you can do and what you can't do. So you know what's okay and what's not okay. If you anticipate a project will require a level of decision-making normally outside your position, get clarity beforehand about what authority you have to make decisions. So if I'm going to leave town, and I'm going to leave my top 2 leaders running the show while I'm gone, well, they need to know what authority they have, right? So if normally they don't make any financial decisions because I'm always around, can they make financial decisions while I'm gone? And the answer is, they'll know. They will assume not. But what if I'm taking off and I let them know before I go? Okay, you have a company credit card. If something happens and it's less than X dollars, just take care of it. And it could be like a simple thing as, they have a supply budget. It's like, hey, if we run out of anything and you need to get some stuff, if it's less than $100, just do it. Then they know they have spending authority up to $100. If I take off and say I'm going on one of my road trips, I'm going to be gone for a month and I'm hitting the national parks, I have no idea what the cell service is going to be like, so I don't know if they'll even be able to get hold of me. I might let them know, it's like, okay, you have the company card and you have problem-solving authority up to, and I might make it $500 or even $1,000. It's like, if it's over, give $1. If it's over $500, try to get hold of me. But if you can't get hold of me, you can spend up to $2,000. But at least try. And so we would set up the permissions beforehand. And they get to decide what they're going to do. When you set up what someone's permissions are, you set up what someone's authority is, you set up what decision-making they will be allowed to make. If it's normally outside the position, if it normally follow to me, they need to know that. And if I'm leading up, do I need to know what authority I have if I'm leading up to my leaders? Or would my leader rather all of that was still decided by them? So if I'm doing a project and I foresee this project is going to cost some money, do I have the budgetary authority to make those purchases, to hire those people, to sign off on those contracts? Or do those have to go back to my leader for my leader's signature? And I need to know that. And the vendors need to know that. They need to know, like, are you operating within the scope of your authority? Because if I go to a vendor and say, oh yeah, we need this, okay, 25 grand, done. And then they produce, and then the company comes and says, oh no, he didn't have authority to enter into a $25,000 contract, he only has $5,000 of authority. It's like, you needed the signature of the executive vice president for $25,000. Okay, I need to know that, and ideally I need to have that in writing. And so if I'm going to be authorized up to $25,000, and that's beyond the scope of my position normally, I probably need that in writing, signed off by someone with the authority, so that the vendors know I do have signing authority on this. No, we don't have to get back hold of corporate in New York City. I have the authority to enter into this contract. And so getting your permission sorted out, getting the authority you have sorted out when you might need it, being clear on what you can and cannot do, and what might be fuzzy, what might be a check-in, what might be a try to get hold of me with my leadership, that helps me lead up. Because it shows I'm thinking ahead. It shows I'm being strategic. It shows I'm being tactical. It shows that I'm not making my leader responsible for being at my beck and call at every step in the project that my leaders put me in charge of. Unless the leader wants to be that tight in the loop. I'm going to close with this as a lead-up thing, applying the GAP principle. So this is an ultimate lead-up thing. How do you get a raise? How do you get a promotion? 4P360 leadership style is you use the GAP principle. So this is all you do. It's pretty simple and straightforward. Gather what relevant information you can beforehand. So what do you need to know, if anything, about either the position you would be applying for, or about what it takes to be worth more money to the company? Then look at your actions in your current role and what opportunity you have to demonstrate qualification for more benefits or another position. Now, it's a lot easier to figure out whether you think you're worth more money to the company. If you think that you are more valuable an asset to the company than you were when you last hit whatever your current pay scale is. If you are now a more valuable asset to the company than you were when you hit your pay scale, you have a reasonable argument to ask for more pay. If, however, you are not a more valuable asset than you were when you hit the pay scale that you're at right now, chances are you're going to have a gap to close. Now, where this can be the most challenging is when there's a different position that you're interested in, and there's a lot of pieces of that position that you don't normally do in the position that you're in. Where you could be brilliant at your job now, but that's a different job. And what of that different job can you practice in the job you're in now? So you're looking at that. Then you discuss the matter with relevant leaders and explain what you would like to achieve and how you can achieve it. I'm going to unpack that in a little more detail in a moment. Now, if there's no meaningful gap, you ask now. And so if you talk, now this means you don't walk in with your own opinion. You walk in with your opinion as a starting place for the discussion. So if I sit down with a leader and I tell them, like, look, when I first started working for you as your attorney, X number of years ago, I was worth $250 an hour, and this was why. Now with my added experience, my added expertise, these other problems that I've solved for the company, and with my outside private clients, I now charge $400 an hour. And over the course of time, as my fee has gone up, I haven't been charging you more. I will intend to charge you more, but I want to check in with you and make sure that you think the services I provide are worth what I'm charging other clients. Now, if they say no because, I need to find out what the no, why the no, and what the because is. And they might have a explanation that might be a good explanation. And I said, well, no, the work you do for us is pretty basic and straightforward, and we could have a younger, less experienced lawyer take care of that for us for $250 an hour. Like, we don't need a $400 an hour lawyer, except on the higher end stuff. And they might decide, like, now, on the other hand, when we're involved in this scale of litigation, when we're dealing with that kind of problem, when we need these kind of contracts looked at and negotiated, we want you to do that, and we will pay you $400 an hour for that. We want your expertise on that. But for the work we do over here, just of the structural stuff, the easy stuff, the crossing of T's, the dotting of I's, the processing the contracts, the just looking things over to make sure that there's nothing funny on we can give that to somebody else. So unless you would like to still do that work, and we'll pay you $250 for that work, but we'll pay you $400 for this work. And we could just talk about it. In any position, I might sit down with a boss, and the boss will say, okay, I see what you want to achieve. You want to raise from, say, $60,000 a year to $66,000 a year. You're looking for a $500 a month raise. I understand your pitch. Yeah, you're probably worth an extra $500 a month. Well, then it's like, all right, well, then can I have $500 a month more starting in my next paycheck? And that answer might be a yes. Or on the other hand, the boss might say, well, you know what, actually? You're not worth an extra $6,000, but if you want a bonus, because you ask, like, okay, so if I was to be worth $66,000, if I was to be worth $72,000, if I was to be worth $90,000 to the company, what would I need to do differently from what I'm doing right now to be worth $90,000 to this company? And you discuss the matter. And if there's a gap, and it says, all right, well, you're definitely worth 60. You're reasonably worth 66. So we're willing to give you a pop in your salary to $5,500 a month. But if you really want to be worth 90, and you discuss what it would take for me to be worth 90, it's like, well, in your position, that by itself isn't going to be worth 90. But if you could also do these things and produce these outcomes, If you also want to engage in like some sales and you help us close one extra deal a month or one extra deal a week, that would be worth 90. I say, okay. And then you set a reasonable time to demonstrate your worthiness. And then in a case like that, it might be, okay, so if I get this done in the next 30 days, can we meet and talk about it again? Or 60 or 90, whatever is a reasonable time frame for whatever gap needs to be closed. Set the reasonable time to meet again so you have time to demonstrate your worthiness of what you want. And you ask to schedule another meeting to review your progress. And if your boss has said, okay, this is what you need to do to be worth $90,000 to us. And you just have a quick check-in. And it might be, say, it might take 90 days to show you're worth $90,000. But you might have 30-day check-ins, just like a quick 15-minute check-in on the progress. And part of it is on, say, my side, if I'm doing it, is I will readily admit if I'm not able to close that gap. And that might be just part of what the meeting's for. I feel like I'm succeeding or I feel like I'm not succeeding. I feel like I can or I feel like I can't. Or I need to ask for help or ask for guidance. Get some feedback, get some input, get something specific. Like, if part of my job involves sales, I might find it's like, okay, I've learned everything about our products, I've learned everything about our services, but my close rate is down at the bottom end of our salespeople. And since we're all out in the field, I can't talk to our top salespeople. Do you have a recommended book, a recommended program, something that you think would help me? And they might say, oh yeah, get Brian Tracy's sales program and just like listen to that in your car. Like, oh, I'll do that, thank you. And then say, now my sales rate closes more. And then I'd sit down and tell them, and say, well, okay, Scott, I see that you've done the work. You're not quite worth 90. But you can make a good argument that you're worth 78. We'll pay you 78. Now, I might be happy with 78. I might be grateful for 78. I might still aim for 90, or I might settle for 78. And that's the part of 4P360 style of pursuing a raise. Same thing with pursuing a promotion. I would like to get Steve's job when Steve moves on. And we've heard that he's looking for another position. When that vacancy occurs, I would like to be a candidate for that position. What can I do to be ready to walk in and start doing his job? What can I do to learn all the skills I need to learn so that if he walks out on Friday, I could walk in that office on Monday doing his job? I said, well, we can't guarantee that we'll give you the job. So I'm not asking for a guarantee to get the job. I'm asking for your help and guidance, and what could I do to be the best candidate for the job? And then I'll apply for the job and I'll interview for the job, and you'll already know if I could do the job because I'm already here. And when you do it that way, now try to imagine this for a moment from the boss's perspective. Suppose you own a company. What's very, very common? People come to you and they just want more money. For what? They want more money. Sometimes they want more money because they've been here for a while. Like, okay, well, you've been here for a while, but you're still doing the same work you were doing when you got here. So what makes you worth more money? Because you've been here for a year, you just get more money because you've been here for a year. You're not doing any better work. So imagine being the boss. And instead of just they come ask for more money, they come ask, how can I be worth more money? I would like to earn $25 an hour. Right now I'm earning $22 an hour. What can I do to be worth $25 an hour to this company? Now sometimes I've seen some employers just so impressed with the question, they go like, I'll pay you $25 an hour right now. Because they're so impressive, someone's not just comes and says, I need more money. Now, if you don't give me more money, I walk. And a lot of the bosses, they might have thought, like, well, you're a good employee, but I don't like this attitude, and I don't want to work this attitude into my team. So, go ahead and walk. So, well, I'm not talking about right now. So, no, I don't want to take any opportunities away from you. By all means, go ahead. But imagine being the boss and someone comes to you and they just ask you, how can I be worth more money? Oh, I see Steve is going to be leaving sometime soon. What what can I do to learn all of the skills I need so that I can have Steve's job when he goes? And if you have someone coming to you with that mindset, they are asking what they can do to be worth it instead of just demanding it. They're asking what they can do to be worthy of the thing that they want, whether they get the thing or not. As a leader, as a boss, impressed? I would be impressed. I wouldn't be surprised because I teach my team this, but I would still be impressed because in the grand scheme of things, that is an unusual strategy. It is a beautiful strategy. It is a leader's strategy to lead up, to show that I am here to make a difference. I am here to be a plus, not a minus. I am here to be worthy of what I want. I am here to be an asset. And if I'm a good enough asset, I deserve to be compensated for the quality of asset I am. And if I want to be compensated at a higher level, I should be a better asset. If I want a percentage of a deal, I should be an asset in the deal. I shouldn't be telling my lead team members, well, just let me know when we have money. What? No, it's like, what can I do to be worth my 20%, 30%, 50%? Like, how do I contribute? What do you need me to learn? What do you need me to do so I can be partners in this deal so that I deserve the money that I'm asking to be paid? And just that mentality is a big part of how you lead up. So 4P360 leadership. 7 directions. Line of authority leadership, leading down and leading up, the most cleanly defined. And thus the easiest to do. The most science, the least art. So be a 4P360 leader. And learn how to be a leader on a team of leaders. And learn how to be a leader for your leader so that you are a better asset. And you learn to lead up so it makes your leader's job that much easier to do. And you become that much more valuable an asset on your team.